The word actor brings to mind two polar extremes: stardom, seduction, fame, and fortune. Yet also living on pennies, dreams, and on other people's couches. Both legends and lost souls bound by a single word: actor. But the craft is more than just success, struggle, and serendipity. The craft is a mindset, one that can change the way you see yourself and the world around you. It sharpens your intuition, teaches you how to own the room and influence those around you. There's no better way to discover yourself than to first try on somebody else. It isn't Hollywood. It's not Broadway. This is Riddlesbrood. So welcome to the Acting Out podcast. And now your host, Clyde P. Riddlesbrood.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on Riddlesbrood's Acting Out podcast. Once again, my name is Clyde P. Riddlesbrood, and I'm going to be your host as usual. And to change things up a little bit, we have a special guest with us today, my son, Jerry Long.
Hello.
Hello. Well, Jerry, are you happy to be on the podcast with me today?
Yeah, I am happy.
It's certainly better than doing chores, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's good. That's good. Today's interesting topic is a little bit about what it's like to grow up, or at least, as a kid, work around the theater industry, maybe even the entertainment industry in general. So one of the things I think is going to be helpful and useful to anybody that's a parent of a kid that seems to be interested in doing community theater, or if they just want to be involved in entertainment in some way, shape, or form, they're getting the bug. I think it's kind of useful to have an idea of what it might be like, if you're actually did get involved and you're doing shows and you're in front of an audience and you're kind of living that kind of entertainment lifestyle, what it might be like. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how it is when you're a kid growing up around entertainment. And I'm going to start off with myself. For me, my mother and father were both heavily into the entertainment industry. So my father, Ronald Long, he had been in bands. He was a DJ. He had been in different shows. And all through when I was growing up, I was always asked to come and help him load into a show. And I had to carry lights and carry speakers. And Jerry, have you ever had that happen to you?
Yeah, I do help my dad a lot with his theater company.
And who is your dad? Is it me?
Yep.
So, as you can see, if you're a kid and your parents are in the theater industry, you're probably going to get roped into doing a show or being involved in shows, even against your own will. But for me, when I was a kid, I always liked it. I have fond memories of my mother. Actually, she used to sing down at the shore. In the summer, she had gigs at the Rusty Nail and a bunch of other places in Cape May and Wildwood. And I remember being a little kid up pretty much till 3 a.m, waiting in the restaurant for her to get done her gig because she didn't have a babysitter. So I was just sitting in there talking to the waitresses and goofing around. So I certainly have those kind of memories. Jerry, let me ask you a question. Do you remember what was the first show I think we had you in? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. I remember, I think it was the 2010 Christmas Carol.
The 2010 Christmas Carol. Now you were just a baby then.
Yeah.
That's right. If I remember correctly, and I know you can't possibly remember this, but you were a tiny little baby and your mom had you in costume. And in the Christmas Carol, she was holding you and took you out for the opening scene. And she was just holding you, and everybody in the audience thought you were some kind of doll.
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden she put you down and you stood up by yourself and started moving around, and everybody in the audience went, "Oh." And that was one of your first experiences on stage as a small child. And I even remember, actually, before the curtain went up, we were all backstage and your mother was holding you and you were kind of getting fidgety. You were like, starting to whine and cry a little bit. Like, You didn't want her to grab you and hold you anymore. And then when the curtain went up, the lights like shined bright right at everybody's face. All of a sudden, your eyes got wide and you're immediately quiet. You were just like in shock. You're like, whoa, what is this? There's 1,000 people sitting out there. So that was your first show. That was your first show. That was amazing.
Yeah.
And actually, my dad was in that show too. I was Scrooge. My dad, your grandfather, was Christmas Present. So that was all three of our generations on stage in 2010. So that was a big one. But do you remember one actually that you remember being in?
Well, I remember being Tiny Tim in the porch shows.
Yep, that's right. That's right. You were Tiny Tim. We dragged you into that a couple times in Summers Point.
Yeah.
And so it's always a lot of fun to think about these things, and it's a nice memory, especially for me and for your mom. But any parent that has their kids in these kind of shows, it's always a really fun memory to look back and have pictures of, hey, remember when we were in that show together? And you have all the pictures of everybody in costume, and it just makes a nice memory. So I know a lot of the people that are in, the community theater program that we do in Smithville twice a year. I know a lot of the parents always tell me, it was such a nice experience, and it was so nice to be able to, get a chance to have my kid up there on stage. They look so cute. They were dressed like a fairy, or they were a Christmas caroler or something like that. And, it's just a really nice. And some of the parents actually occasionally are an actor or actress themselves, and they jump in the show. And I've always found them to really enjoy a moment where they get to be in a show with their kid. Because years later, when they're just talking to each other and their kids, 28 years old, and they're sitting at a bar talking, they can be like, remember that one time? So that's always a nice aspect about being in some of these shows as a kid. But you know what? I think there's a lot of things about being involved in entertainment that's a nice learning experience for a young person. Now, how old are you, Jerry? Why don't you tell our audience how old you are?
I'm 15, turning 16 in November.
That's right. That's right. And do you think you even know like how many different shows you may have been forced to be in?
Oh, God, probably many.
I definitely know, besides Tiny Tim, I know you were thrown in a few times. I think, were you in the Peter Pan show?
I don't know. I think I was doing tech.
Oh, you know what? You were definitely, I think.
I was behind the tech booth.
Oh, okay, that's right. But were you in the Merlin show? That's right, you were a giant, right?
Yeah.
Now, how was that? Somebody your age, of course, there was a bunch of other teenagers there, probably some kids that were 15, some a little younger, some a little older. How was it being involved backstage with all those other kids your age?
It was very fun, and I met a lot of friends and good people, and yeah.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. The nice thing about being involved in community theater, at least the one that I think, is things are a lot different than they used to be when I was young. When I was young, we didn't have the internet. There was no social media. There was none of that stuff. So the only time you really got to hang out with friends is when you got together and were involved in some kind of activity. Like, I remember when I was a kid, we used to play baseball every once in a while, and that was a way that all my friends all got together with their parents and we did things. But other than that, really, this day and age, kids can't get together because their parents live too far apart. It's too much of an inconvenience to drive around. And so kids are pretty much only talking to each other on their computers, right?
Yeah.
What do you think is the most common way that you interact or communicate with your friends?
Well, if I'm not seeing them in person, I would obviously text them or call them.
How about on a game? Can you chat on a game?
Yeah, some games.
Well, all that's great, but you know what? The one thing that I like about the way we do our shows is that we create an opportunity where a lot of parents and a lot of kids can get together and they can all hang out with each other at rehearsal. They all get to know each other. They make new friends, and they can, outside of the show, even if the show's done, they've now met a couple other kids that are their age, and the parents have met each other. And you know what? Maybe they get together, they go see a movie, or even if they engage online. Like, I know a lot of the kids that we've had in the shows before, they would exchange each other's cell phone numbers, and they'd all of a sudden become friends just texting each other.
Yeah.
So it's a great way to meet friends. Do you think it's hard, Jerry, to meet friends these days, like from school?
Well, a lot of people are more introverted now that social media, because everyone's like glued to their phones and not communicating with people in person.
Now, do you ever? Now, this is important because me, I'm 53, but you're obviously much younger. When I was a kid, it was a totally different world. Do your friends and you guys ever talk to each other and say, like, boy, it's a shame that you live too far away? Or
oh yeah, all the time.
How about like, it's a shame that we can't get together, we can't hang out. Do you guys ever have any like ideas of like what could we do?
Yeah.
Well, what do you guys think of things that you could do together? Do you guys ever think about like, oh, we'll get involved in some kind of an activity? Maybe we'll join a karate class, or we'll join a soccer team, or in our case, do a show together.
Well, me and my friends like to do escape rooms because it's,
well, that can be fun.
Yeah.
And it's fun. And you're in person.
Yeah.
You're not like doing it over the phone. You're actually in person. You're interacting with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to an escape room soon, aren't we?
Yeah, on Friday.
That's right. That's right. Well, you know what? These are all great ideas. And, one of the things that I try to do whenever we are doing one of our community theater productions is we try to create an environment where the parents not only feel comfortable, but it's low key, it's more relaxed. We do our rehearsals a little bit differently than most people do. We actually work with a local brewery in Galloway Township, and they have a banquet room, and they let us use their banquet room so the adults can actually, grab a beer while they're, and they all sit in the other end of the room, and while the kids are rehearsing and singing and dancing around and goofing around, the parents can be mingling and having a drink. So it's definitely a different vibe. It's more laid back and more relaxed, and the community building aspect is a big part of what we're trying to achieve. Now, let me ask you this. Is there one part of being involved in shows as a kid that you don't like? Like, is there something that you remember like, oh boy, it's always a little bad when this happens?
Well, if I'm casted as a character I don't want to be, then I'm not into it as much. But yeah. Well,
your case is a little different than most kids. They come out to the audition, they get auditioned, and they go for a part. You, sadly, because I'm your dad, we sometimes have to jam you into a part.
You just say you're going to do this, and that's that.
Yeah, exactly. That happens. That happened to me. But the good thing about that is that you kind of learn on the fly. So you're a little bit easier. You're not so introverted because you're used to being in front of people. You're used to having to do different things that other people mostly are afraid to do. Because if you have never had to do anything like that, sometimes being in front of an audience can be really scary.
Yeah.
And you don't always have that feeling because you're somewhat used to it because, you were doing it when you were little and you've been doing it your whole life. So it's not, I know you haven't done any huge parts or anything, but still it's not as scary as it might be for somebody that's never done it.
Yeah.
And that's actually very important because in this day and age, a lot of kids, if they're just in their house and, just on games playing Roblox and Minecraft and all that kind of stuff, and they're never interacting socially with any other kids their age, they might have a tendency to be a bit introverted, maybe be a little antisocial or shy or afraid. So one of the things that we try to do in our rehearsals is we do like little improv games to get kids out of their shell, to give them an opportunity to feel more comfortable. So, honestly, in a lot of ways, doing theater for kids is a great way to ensure that they get that socialization that they might be lacking in today's highly technical kind of world. So that's one of the big, strong things that we're doing. And before we go on, I just want to mention a couple of things. We're actually in July right now, but we are gearing up for our big Christmas Carol. The auditions for the Christmas Carol, for anybody who's listening and has kids and is a parent that might be interested in getting involved. We have a big audition. It's in September. It's I think it's the second Sunday. It'll be on our webpage. You'll be able to see it, but it's like the second Sunday of September. We do an audition, and it's at the Garden State Beer Company in Galloway. Again, all the information will be on our website and our audition page. But I definitely invite anybody to come out, especially if you have kids that you feel might be a little shy, that could use an opportunity to build some confidence, to engage and talk with other kids and meet new friends. I definitely would encourage you to come on out to our audition. It's a really nice experience, and we try very, very hard to turn it into not just a show, but also a nice learning experience for all the kids and the parents too. Now, Jerry, let me ask you a question. When you are ever in a show, has there ever been a time where you're backstage or you see something going on, or you see other actors out there, and you say, you know what, I think I learned something from this. Like, this might have been an interesting learning experience. Can you remember anything that you might have happened from a perspective of a teenager?
I have learned a couple things, like
when you were doing a part, or maybe even if you were just backstage trying to get in the giant costume. I'm sure that was tough.
Well, for the giant, it definitely was a little stressful because it's hard to maneuver in that giant suit.
Yeah.
And it's really heavy on your neck.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Obviously trying to make a big costume, and for the people out there listening, he had to be a giant. So he had to wear a backpack with a big head that went way over his head to make him look like he was 12 feet tall. And it was definitely a big costume to wear, but it looked really cool. What do you think you learned from that experience?
That you need to get a back pillow for it.
I'm going to write that down. Back pillow for giant. Got it. Well, how about, though, learning for yourself? Like, man, if I was ever in a circumstance like this, how would I think differently, or how would I do anything different?
I would try to, talk with the actors to see if, knowing where they would stand, so I know where to go.
So to be a little bit more prepared?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's good. Obviously, sometimes in a show, the one thing that's interesting about a show is it's always a little bit of controlled chaos, because you never know what's going to happen. It's not like being in the classroom where everything's regimented and everybody knows where they sit and everybody knows who's in charge and all that stuff. The bell rings, everybody knows what time. In a show, it's a lot more controlled wildness. And that is actually a very good thing for a kid to know, that sometimes in life, you get thrown into something that's a little tricky. Something might happen that you're not expecting, and you have to not stress out, not freak out, not totally lose it, but actually adapt, figure out a way to get through it, keep a cool head, and make sure you get through it. That can be tricky. And in our shows, there's always those moments of stress in any show, or something goes wrong backstage, something all of a sudden breaks, something doesn't work, an actor isn't there, nobody knows where they are, they're in the bathroom or who knows what. And you have to improv, and you have to adapt. So that's a really important thing that I think any kids and teenagers that are involved in community theater can really learn a lot about life by learning how to be very adaptive and not so easily disoriented by chaos. Now, here's another good one. If you bumped into another kid at your school and the kid said, "Oh, you know what, Jerry, I heard you were involved in some shows. I'm thinking about being involved, but I really don't know anything about it." What advice might you give to them if they thought that they were interested in getting involved but weren't sure?
I would say that they should always be prepared for the worst, even if the worst doesn't happen. They should always come knowing what they're gonna do.
Well, obviously knowing your lines or being prepared. Yeah. Now, what if they said, "But I'm afraid to talk to people, and they might think I'm." Weird, or, I might be too shy.
Well, you always have to talk to someone eventually. Eventually you're going to have to talk to them because you have a major part with them or something.
So you're going to have to talk to them anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that what you're kind of saying is almost like,
it's inevitable.
Sometimes if you want to overcome a fear or overcome a challenge, the best way to do that is to literally put yourself in that situation.
Right.
It's almost like, how they would say people are afraid of spiders. They would like put a spider near them, and then next time a little nearer, and next time a little nearer. And that's how they would get people to not be so scared of something, is by gradual exposure.
Yeah.
And honestly, theater is great for that because it definitely builds confidence. Even in very little kids, there's been plenty of times where I've seen very little kids that would come in and not speak, not talk at all. And after about 3 or 4 rehearsals, when they see all the other kids around them doing it, they realize, oh, everybody else is doing it. And nobody else seems to have a problem. And it's that social kind of confirmation, they feel like it's acceptable. And then they come out of their shell and they start laughing, they start doing jokes, they start, doing their lines. So it really is a great way. It really is a great way for kids that might be, at home, not getting a chance to get out. A great way for them to come out of their shell and especially meet some new kids. But that was a great conversation, Jerry. You know what? I really appreciate you coming on today and giving me some of your feedback.
Yeah, it was fun.
And has any of your other friends ever said anything to you when you were done a show and they saw some of your pictures maybe of you? And what do they usually say when they see a picture of you in a crazy costume?
They would say how did you do? Or how was the show?
Well, that's great. Well, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for visiting us today on the Riddlesbrood Acting Out podcast. We always have interesting things about theater to describe and tell you guys about. And don't forget, if anybody's interested in coming to an audition or booking a touring theater show or pretty much any kind of entertainment, take a look at our website, which is www.riddlesbrood.com, and I'll spell that. It's RIDDLESBROOD.com, riddlesbrood.com. And our phone number is 609-377-9125. Give us a call. It might even be me picking up the phone, so I hope to hear from you. Thank you so much, and we hope to hear from you guys soon.